Today my guest is Julie Belaga. She is an environmentalist, an ardent environmentalist that has been in public life since 1972. Julie, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure. It's wonderful to see you.
Wonderful to see you. We've known each other how long?
Oh my goodness, since 1965.
1965 when you moved to Westport.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly want to talk today about all of the things that you're still doing. I mean, it's been 4 decades almost that you've been in public life, as I said.
Oh my God.
But why don't we actually start from the beginning? Let's start from when we met in 1965 when you moved to Westport.
Mm-hmm.
You got involved with the League of Women Voters.
That's right.
I remember going into the kitchen and seeing you there with some actual typewriter with the keys typing something.
Days.
Those were the days. And I have wondered all these years what inspired you to get involved in politics in the League of Women Voters. You just jumped right in. What was that about?
It's funny, I haven't thought about that in a long time, Prill, but what really did get me into it was the death of John F. Kennedy. We were living in England. My husband was working in London, and the family was in England. And in those days, television was very dicey in England, and we were sitting on the floor in our den, in our house in England, and suddenly the word came that the president had been shot. And we all sat there on the floor, and suddenly the whatever it is that was going on in the sky that would project this to England went over the horizon, and we lost the whole thing. And I thought, I cannot bear it. I am sitting here wondering what is happening. It was almost at that moment that I said, my Lord, when I get back to Connecticut, when I get back to America.
Right, you didn't
I didn't know we were going to be in
Connecticut
Connecticut at that point. I am going to get involved because this is very painful. And that's how it all happened.
So you just came to Connecticut, you came to Westport, you found out about the League of Women Voters.
Mm-hmm. Well, I actually asked people, what's an organization around town that would actually give me some information and help me get to know the community better? And people said, hands down, well, the League of Women Voters is a place to go. So I did.
And then how long did it take before you became the president of the League of
God.
Women Voters?
I don't remember, a couple of years.
Yeah. And then you went to the P&Z, or did you go to the RTM first?
No, what happened, I joined the League, and I became the president of the League. And while I was president of the League, I testified on behalf of the League opposing the sale of Hales Court. They were going to sell it for private use, and the League felt that that was the only moderate cost housing in the town, and to sell it to the private sector would deplete our stock of access for people who really needed those kinds of houses. And I testified that day, and the next morning, the selectman, who was then John Kemish, woke me up. I'm not a morning person, and the phone rings, and I think, oh my God.
Don't like to talk to people before 10 o'clock.
You got it. And and it was John Kemish, and he said, we have an opening on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I saw you last night at this hearing. Would you be interested? And I thought, whoa, I can't do that and be president of the League, so I had to decide. I decided that I would rather be on the Planning and Zoning Commission making the decisions than standing in front of them and testifying, trying to influence the decision. You get a lot more influence on than out. So I went to the League board and I said, guys, I'm going to resign and I'm going to accept this offer.
That was a pretty controversial, if I'm remembering now, I was in maybe 6th, 7th, I was not that old, 6th, 7th, 8th grade at the most. And I remember my father talking about this decision about housing, and it was controversial at the time. It was
very controversial. I stopped going to parties for a while because I couldn't stand being pummeled. My husband said, oh my God, it's enough already. What we were trying to do was to bring some multiple family housing to Westport. At that point, there was nothing but single family housing here. So there was no, all the lovely condos that we have on the Post Road. There was nothing like that.
Exactly.
And we felt that there had to be alternative housing stock for people who wanted to stay in Westport, who didn't want to stay in their big house with their kids had gone to college. And it was very controversial.
And look at Hales Court today.
And
finally, now we're, that
expanded it. It is a wonderful setting for families. And But nothing in Westport is non-controversial.
Everything in Westport's controversial.
Everything takes a hit. And so, after 4 years on the Planning and Zoning Commission, I thought, well, I've done that, been there, done that. And so I ran for the RTM. That's when the RTM came in, because I thought, well, we'll see whether I could ever win an election, because at this point I was a controversial figure. And what I discovered was people knew the name, they didn't know why. So I won.
Well, when I always tell people how much I admire you. You don't have to blush, but I always tell people how much I admire you, and I think that it began there. It began right there with that controversy, because I remember my father talking about you as a woman, and speaking up and being very clear and very passionate, but not his stereotype of what a woman was like. So anyway,
That's actually very nice to hear, because your father was terrific. So that makes me feel very nice that he thought I had a good quality role to play in town.
To stand up for yourself and to stand up for what you believe in, and to say it persuasively is a gift, but it's also something that I think one cultivates and works at, and I think you've done that over the years. Fast forward to the State House. You spent 10 years in the Connecticut State House, championing a lot of environmental things. Yeah, talk about that a little
Prill,
bit.
Having been on the Planning and Zoning Commission, you really get a sense of how the environment impacts every individual in their own little home. And you don't really think of it in that way, but the biggest single investment many people make in this world is in their home, and they want to make sure that the water is clean and the air is clean, and the kids are going to go stand in the corner and breathe clean air. And I hadn't even thought of it in that terms, but I was appointed by then the governor, what's her name? The woman.
Oh, the woman.
Ella Grasso.
Yes.
She appointed me to serve on a committee to look at coastal zone management.
Was this the beginning of your quote-unquote environmentalism?
Yeah, it absolutely was.
So it was just an appointment.
It was an appointment,
yes.
And I worked on that committee, and we said that the towns all along the coastline had to band together and identify limitations to what should go on along the coastline so that we preserve it for the public. And so when I got to the legislature, I was elected to the legislature, they asked me what committee I wanted to go on. I said, I want to go on the Environment Committee, because this report was coming from this committee that I had served on, and I could move it forward in the legislature.
And so many of these issues, we're talking about affordable housing so that Westport remains heterogeneous enough to support people that come in, or the police people, the teachers,
that's right.
Firemen, et cetera, firewomen. Also environmentally, I remember a few years ago a big campaign, and I bet the roots of it had to do with you way back then, about septic tanks, about
yes.
Individual households cleaning out their septic tank every 2-3 years at the most.
It really fascinated me when I actually came home after I retired. This is a really fast forward.
Did you actually retire ever?
Well,
well, that's part of what we're talking about here today. I haven't seen a lot of evidence of real retirement.
I'm not getting paid for what I do now.
Yeah.
I got paid in those days.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, but what I discovered was that many people move to Westport coming from other states or coming from New York City, and they have no idea that they even have a septic system. So they don't even bother to ask questions about it. And there was a really good committee that was RTM and the League of Women Voters that went around and surveyed to find out who knew and what did they know and how.
Right.
And so really what you put in your septic system often goes into the waterways of the coastal waterways. So it's, it's a never-ending series of issues, environmental issues. New things emerge and old things come back again, like,
And maybe the more I firmly believe that the more you get interested in something, it sort of explodes wide open and it increases your interest. I think of you as a lifelong learner.
Well, I will be honest with you. I love change. And there are some people who really love the same routine and they love to engage in it and improve it and perfect it. I like new things. And so I'm always willing to try something new. And it's just my personality. But I try to keep it in an arena of issues that I am fascinated by, but I'm always looking for a new way to implement that.
Well, this is a perfect opportunity to talk about one of the new things you're doing now, which is the Connecticut Mirror. Is that, talk about this a little bit.
Well,
because this is all new.
It is brand new. It's
Yes.
brand new. And I have been so irritated over the years that people, particularly in Fairfield County, all of your viewers, are totally unaware of what happens in Hartford. And when I was in Hartford, working consistently, I was there for
Right,
10 years, but
years.
about 4 years into my term, I was in the supermarket shopping on Saturday. First of all, people would say, "What are you doing shopping?" Well, who's going to feed my family, for God's sake?
You have 3 kids, I have to say, and now
yes.
you have how many grandchildren?
Three. But some woman came up to me and said to me, "I swear this is not apocryphal, this is real." The woman came up and said to me, "Julie, I don't know how you can stand commuting to Albany."
And this is a grown woman
This is
thinking
a
that the
grown-
capital is in Albany.
She read the New York Times, she followed what was going on with Rudy Giuliani, she knew all that stuff. I couldn't believe it. And so I began to watch. Well, there were some good news people along the coastline, little newspapers, but it was really bits and pieces. It wasn't comprehensive. I had this incredible freedom. I could do anything I wanted because nobody knew what I was doing. And that's not healthy. You know, that's really not healthy.
You mean in the State House you could do anything you wanted?
You bet. I could vote any way I wanted and nobody didn't know. I'll tell you who was really good at the time, the Staples Radio. They used to call me.
And they were the
ask
only
me.
ones?
They were the best. Those kids were wonderful. I wrote a couple of their college applications, recommended them. But I just felt that it was really a sad commentary that people did not know what was happening that was going to impact their daily lives. How could you not know? How could you not care?
Right.
So about a year and a half ago, I got a letter from some people saying, we are going to start a website, called it ConnecticutMirror.org. It is the website of the legislative and executive branches in Hartford and what they are doing. I was so excited, I sent them a check. Not often.
And not often?
Not often, but I sent them a check.
I went on the site today, by the way.
Yeah.
Very informative.
Isn't it important?
In-depth articles, their own writing in many cases. I mean,
Yes.
they're researched and written.
They're
It's not
doing
just
this
recycled.
We've been able to hire a lot of the people from the rather defunct Hartford Current. Hartford Current fired a lot of the wonderful talent, people that I remembered from my days in the legislature, and we've hired them, and they really understand the state and they understand the implications of issues. So it has been so much fun because I'm not a techie, and I'm not, I don't really
Or you
know.
weren't a techie, because now you're starting to become one.
I can tell you, I get up in the morning, I immediately go to Connecticut Mirror, and I am so...
Do you have an iPad?
No, but I have a smartphone.
There you go. I got my mother an iPad.
Oh, did you? Well,
Changed her life, whole different topic. We're talking about
yeah,
you.
I'm doing well. I really am doing well, but I work with all these young people. They all have all these techie stuff. That's why I got the smartphone. I said, oh my God.
But you're going on the Connecticut Mirror in the morning.
I go every morning.
Yes, and check
I
it
really
all out.
do. And I want people to understand how important it is for them to know what goes on in Hartford. And I know that everybody isn't going to care as much as I do, but I think there are certain things that are so powerful that they really have to have some background and some history in it. So I would welcome their interest and their enthusiasm about it. It's a big, my learning curve is very high.
Have you thought about running again? We could make an announcement today and make history.
Over my dead body. No, I
Been
don't.
there, done that.
No, been there, done that. No, I like change.
Now, I think of you as famous, but as you were saying, fame is fleeting. And, people, as generations come up, not everybody might know
No, they don't.
about all of your history. So let me list a few things that you've done. you, in addition to being in the State House for 10 years, and tell me if I get my facts wrong.
Oh, of course.
Of course you will. But in 1987, instead of running again for another term in the State House, you were the 1986 gubernatorial nominee for, obviously, gubernatorial for governor in Connecticut. You ran against O'Neill, William
Bill
O'Neill.
O'Neill.
Bill O'Neill.
He was an incumbent.
He was an incumbent, Democratic incumbent. And after that, you lost the election, but you never really are the kind of person that has a pity party for yourself.
No.
Nah.
It was the best thing I ever did, Prill.
Oh, tell me about that.
Because it was exhilarating.
I saw you on Tom Brokaw. Wasn't that it? I mean, if it wasn't Tom, you were on the evening news, national news one day when I was living in Washington, and I saw you.
I don't remember.
Don't remember? So
I don't
it was
remember.
exhilarating.
But it was exhilarating because I could talk about issues. I really loved the debate. I loved parades. What's not to like?
You like parades?
I loved
Did you
the
learn
issues.
the wave?
Yeah. No, that's a new thing. It was my.
You were like this. Okay.
I will say that I had no idea when I got into it how fascinating I would find it. I really found it very rewarding, and I wasn't going to stay in the legislature any longer. I had been there for 10 years. The issues began to be repetitive, and when the election time came along, the chairman of the Republican Party invited a group of people to his office and said, "Who wants to run for governor?" And none of the men did, and I raised my hand. And I thought, what is the matter? They're all sitting there planning their race.
Yes, but
None
they
of them
didn't raise their
They didn't
hand.
raise-
But you did.
I did. And I figured, what have I got to lose? I've got nothing to lose. I'll learn a lot. And I did lose the election. I remember telling my kids, telling Debbie, your friend, telling all the kids, look, the stars have to be in the right place. It has to be it'll be
Right.
miraculous. This is a Democratic state. It is, the
It's
numbers were
incumbent.
and an incumbent. But it's important to bring these issues to the fore. And I loved doing it.
I would think to have such an audience, and I think that, let me preface this by saying that I've always felt, and I'm not alone in this, the Rotary Club felt this about you as well, that you are not self-serving. You have served the community, the state, the region. You were the regional administrator for the
that
EPA.
was a fabulous
I have
job.
never thought of you as self-serving, and I can't imagine that you would, or anybody would.
You have to think to yourself, public service really is very rewarding. It can be, nowadays I'm not so sure, because it's become so
So
vitriolic.
divisive, exactly.
Oh my God. But all during the time that I was there was a respect for people who cared about issues, and you debated issues. It was the Democrats and Republicans in the House with me. We all enjoyed one another, and we worked together. I can remember going to a Democrat saying, "I've got this wonderful issue. You want to go on with me, and let's pursue it." And I don't think that happens anymore.
It doesn't seem to on the national level, at least.
And I think we need to make sure it doesn't happen in Connecticut. But I really love that job. But as a result of that job, I was asked to serve at the Environmental Protection Agency, and that was George Herbert Walker Bush, who was the president, and he put me in that slot. It was a fabulous job.
And I was in Boston this weekend. I was on a river cruise, and the person that was speaking the tour was talking about the incredible effort it took to clean up the Boston Harbor, which was a cesspool, and that was you, Julie Belaga.
I grew up in Boston. My father was in the seafood business. Do you remember me telling you this? And
Did you
his
live in Boston
office,
or Brookline?
I grew up in Brookline, but people don't know
Boston,
Brookline, so
right,
I just say Boston. But his office was on the Boston Fish Pier. When I got appointed to EPA and I realized that one of the key issues was the cleanup of Boston Harbor, I thought, my father died. He would have flipped if he knew that was going to be a priority in my life. And we were very successful. We built the Deer Island sewer treatment plant. We cleaned up the effluent that was coming down the Charles River. It was.
They say you can swim in the harbor
you
now.
Can swim in the
except
harbor.
after big storms.
Yeah.
It's still, there's,
Well, you have to
That's
be
true with
careful,
coasts everywhere.
But it was an enormously rewarding venture for me. I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe it.
And this is what I'm saying about running for governor. What I started to say is that to have a platform, to be able, if you're passionate about something, you've researched and thought about something, you've debated and talked about some issue, to be able to have a platform to tell people what you believe is exhilarating.
It was. That's exactly right. At one point, I had some pollsters who took a poll, and I said, I want to talk about the environment. And they came back and said, don't bother, the public isn't interested. I said, I don't care whether they're interested. I'm interested.
And how is the public going to get interested?
How are
This
they
is
ever
one of the
gonna know?
problems with polling.
So
if you
I-
don't speak your mind, how do people know?
you know,
I know.
not everybody's as interested as I am, and I try to be a good girl.
You've done a great job. So after that, then you went to, I don't know if this was the next thing that happened, but I think it was before George Herbert Walker Bush appointed you to the APA. Did you end up at the Kennedy School of Government? Was that
Yes.
before or after?
It was before. When I finished the race for governor, and I lost, I talked to some wonderful guy at Harvard at the Kennedy School,
Yeah.
and he said to me, Julie, you got a 4-month shelf life. I mean, isn't that wonderful?
A little more
Thank
than
you very
a
much.
lot
I
less
said,
than-
you know.
4 months.
He said, you got to do something fast. And he did tell me that the Kennedy School had a program called the Institute of Politics, and they invite 6 people to come for a semester and work with the kids around political issues. It was a baby of Teddy Kennedy and the family at the Kennedy School. And I was one of the lucky people to get one of those appointments, and it was a really wonderful. And I worked with kids, taught them how to run for office, and it was a lot of fun. I loved it. Of course, I back in Boston, I stayed with my sister, and
Oh yes,
you
with
know,
Ruthie.
Yep, my
Yes.
sister Ruthie.
Now you also, this was reminding me that you started out after you graduated from Syracuse, you started out as a teacher, did you not? I mean, a different level. I think you were teaching elementary school.
I was teaching elementary school.
Yeah.
But I will tell you an interesting story. At one point, I had a youngster whose name I cannot remember. I'm sorry,
Is
I
this
don't
at the
remember.
Kennedy School or back in
No, back in
elementary school?
A kid from Longlots.
Oh, okay.
And I was in the legislature, and he called me and said, could he come and talk to me? An assignment he had was to interview people. How did they prepare for their career? Wow, I never prepared for any career except teaching. By this time, I was in the legislature. I'd been in the EPA, you know, in the Conservation Commission, at the P&Z.
Yes.
And I had to think. And I said to him, tell you what, I was a teacher. I taught fourth grade. And what you learn when you teach kids is you have to be able to communicate with people. You have to put things in terms that they can absorb.
Right, and to relate it to things that they already know.
Exactly.
So they can.
And I never thought of it until this young man came and showed up and had a Coke with me. And I'm thinking, yeah, it has been an asset for me, because I really don't believe you should talk to people and talk down to them. I think people want to know, and you have an obligation to explain to them in pretty straightforward terms. So it was always fascinating. I don't know whatever happened to that kid, but he really set me to think.
Now, when you talk about, you know, how you didn't prepare for all of these things that have happened,
Never.
for your political career, for your
Never.
environmental activism, et cetera, if you would call that. I don't know.
That's
would you
what I
call-
do.
I think you do.
That's exactly right.
We were talking in the green room about taking risks. That's something that, you know, if you didn't prepare, you were certainly willing to just be the one that raises their hand and says, yes, I'll run the P&Z, or yes, I'll run for governor. That's
I don't know. I do
Is
not
that
know.
innate? I mean, you were not shy.
No, I'm not shy. I never was shy.
Never were shy.
No. I don't know where that came from. And I just, I don't know how to explain it. I just feel, in a way, now I feel better running the show than not running the show, because I get cranky when meetings run long, you
et
know,
cetera, right.
and so I like to run meetings because I want them to run the way I want them to run. which is very pushy of me, but you know.
I don't think of it that way, but yes.
Yeah,
interesting.
I really never planned a career in public service. It just fell at me, and I think I have been the most lucky woman ever in America, because things have fallen into my lap, and I think what happens is you have to be willing to take a gamble and say, what's the worst? The worst is you fail.
Right.